Osgood Perkins is one of the best horror film directors working today. His directorial debut, Blackcoat's Daughter, was a revelation, showcasing his ability to craft deeply personal and effective horror films on low budgets. That film also served as an early example of what would eventually be dubbed elevated horror. This is a term that I find showcases mainstream film criticism's ignorance surrounding the horror film genre, but it now regrettably serves as a good shorthand for a type of horror film. Perkins has been working on 3 projects recently. Longlegs, released last year, The Monkey, slated to be released on February 21st of this year, and Keeper, slated to be released soon. Neon is distributing all 3 films. This video will examine the first of this trio, Longlegs, in greater detail, allowing me to explore why I love his work and believe his voice is essential to modern horror. So with that being said, let's explore Longlegs. Osgood Perkins uses horror to explore his personal life, private obsessions, and deepest fears to create truly haunting works. Of course, every artist puts themselves into their work, but Perkins does it more explicitly and openly than other horror filmmakers I've seen. A through line in all his works is wrestling with his fragmented family narrative and his parents' tragic deaths. Anthony Perkins, his father, died at 60 years old of AIDS-related pneumonia in 1992. Oz was only 18 years old then, which was a moment of unraveling for the family. Anthony Perkins was a closeted gay man who married Barry Berenson in 1973. This fact of his sexuality was a secret to his children, and his death led to this moment of unraveling, a time where a young Osgood Perkins had to come to terms not only with his father's death, but also his secret life that didn't fit with what his family narrative was and had been. Less than a decade later, his mother, Barry Berenson, died aboard American Airlines Flight 11 during the September 11th attacks. These horrible deaths would have a major influence on his work, with The Blackcoat's Daughter centering on a young girl's attempt to cope with the limitless void that her parents' death manifests. His ability to transform this deeply personal trauma into art that can transcend the standard trauma metaphor horror film is what makes him so special. His acknowledgement of this influence on his work is also something that makes him stand out. His ability to infuse his work with these deeply personal reckonings while being so public in how he discusses how these formative traumas influence his life makes him one of this era's most intriguing horror filmmakers. This would be no different with Longlegs, with the main twist of the film being informed by his own experience of the unraveling of his family narrative. Perkins explained this connection in an interview with Variety. Quote, "The challenge of rectifying what I felt I understood and what I was being told is the genesis for the mother that chooses to be complicit in a story." End quote. This helps to explain his continual exploration of the horror film, the genre most comfortable examining the dark side of life and allowing for the most stark expressions of trauma, grief, and psychological descent. This is Perkins' 4th film he's directed, all 4 being in the horror genre. He spoke in the aforementioned Variety interview as to why he keeps returning. Quote, "I think horror presents the best opportunity for the full range of imagination, containing everything that we don't understand, everything that we can't see, everything that we don't know, everything that lies beyond." End quote. As a horror obsessive, this is music to my ears. It also further proves my point that we are in a golden era for the genre, as each of our modern masters of horror is individually obsessed with exploring the genre's potential, using it as their vehicle for making deeply personal art. Even directors who occasionally make films outside of the genre, such as James Wan, end up returning regularly, unable to resist the strength of the imagery the genre can produce and explore. The film stars Micah Monroe and Nicolas Cage. Monroe had a pre-established Scream Queen reputation due to her work on the excellent It Follows and the underappreciated Watcher. I've been a big fan of her work, which has traced a continual pattern of growth, and can't wait to see It Follows too. Cage is an absolute legend, and his look in the film was carefully guarded throughout the marketing campaign. The captivating marketing campaign featured several well-crafted teasers and trailers and had a website, thebirthdaymurders.net, that fed a steady flow of world-building lore. I was an avid reader of each weekly drop on thebirthdaymurders.net and found the marketing campaign perfect for the movie. It built the hype very high and drove audiences to the theaters. The film became Neon's largest box office hit, making over $127 million worldwide off a reported budget of less than $10 million. The film received positive critical reception. garnering an 86% score on Rotten Tomatoes and a Metacritic rating of 77. Blackwell Journal-Tribune called the film, quote, one of the most truly evil movies I've ever seen, end quote. Guillermo del Toro praised Perkins' direction, tweeting, quote, his metronome, his meticulous composition, and his uncanny sense of evil and impending doom, end quote, as being key elements that make the film and his work so special. There were critiques of the film, with Nicolas Cage's performance being especially polarizing for its aggressive nature. Perkins' direction was also criticized by some, with Maxence Vincent of the Cosmic Circus stating, quote, Perkins' major problem is that he can't seem to focus on one specific storyline, end quote. Despite these criticisms, the film has mostly received a positive critical and audience reception and made it on many Best of 2024 horror movie lists, including my own. With this context explored, let's discuss my thoughts on the film's quality. The film is carried by strong performances, with Mika Monroe delivering at a high level. Her choices for Lee Harker add so much depth to the character in the film. She is an awkward autistic detective whose vulnerability and strength are on full display. Her characterization allows for moments of levity even in a very dark film. I loved her previous performances, but it feels that this is another big step for cementing her legacy. She helps to carry the film, and she plays off the other actors excellently. This is a very strong cast across the board, and the writing of the characters feels more confident here. Perkins has always shied away from dialogue-heavy narratives, but in this film he feels more confident in the dialogue, allowing these characters to feel authentic. This is then added to in spades with the layered performances from a great cast. Nicolas Cage's performance is a make-or-break element of the film, and for me, it works. Critics have pointed to his performance, his appearance, and his arc as being negative elements. I find the over-the-top rock-and-roll-infused persona, as well as the way Cage looks and carries himself, unsettling. Yes, it could be seen as goofy or silly, but for audiences already sucked into the narrative and mood of the picture, his performance feels uncanny and disturbing. Some feel his arc was cut short, and that after his death, the film completely unravels. This misses the point of the film. The point is that the horror is the secret life of Harker's mother, the horrible actions that she kept secret, and how that secrecy corrupted their family life, their mother-daughter connection. Perkins' entire filmography deals with these personal issues that started from the effect that his father staying in the closet had on his family. Perkins being gay wasn't wrong, but staying in the closet had negative consequences for everybody. This is what Oz is saying, as Samantha Allen explains in an article for them.us. Quote, Oz is not saying homosexuality is evil. He's saying well-kept secrets possess an almost otherworldly power. End quote. This is the horror of the film, and so Longlegs' death and the power he still wields takes on an omnipresent malevolent quality. This all leads to the twist of Harker's mother being the accomplice. This is not a logic-breaking twist, and the way it's executed feels whole. It makes a twisted sort of sense and makes rewatches feel even more bleak and sinister. I love twists that inform rewatches in stronger ways, in ways that make the small moments earlier in the narrative hold much stronger weight. This feels like a film best appreciated after multiple rewatches. It's not a film that leans on jump scares, though several strong stings got me. This is not Perkins' strength and not something he's interested in. Instead, he relies on mood and sustained dread, crafting a world, a narrative, characters who feel haunted and doomed, ones who are stuck in a cold world that is slowly unraveling. In this film, the dread fills every frame. It reminds me of the work of Kiyoshi Kurosawa, Pulse and Cure in particular. He leans on his strengths and doubles down on his obsessions and demons. This is how you make something truly affecting and effective, by leaning into what scares and unsettles you, what keeps you up at night, what haunts your waking thoughts. Perkins is the master of setting a tone and sticking with it. This film is much more in line with his directorial debut, Blackcoat's Daughter, than his subsequent efforts, and as a result, it's his best film. He starts by trying to slowly lull the audience into a world that they think they know, the world of Silence of the Lambs, of Seven, and American serial killer procedurals. References abound to the surface-level elements of this world. This brings a much larger audience with Perkins, as he slowly brings you into something much more sinister, unsettling, and unique. This is a strength of the film, which leans on this familiarity until it doesn't have to hide just how weird it's getting. This has led some to critique the film, stating that it has too many threads and that it struggles to juggle them all. But that's not the point. The familiar genre bounds are dropped off once they are no longer necessary. We go into stranger and stranger territory towards the end until we get a truly bonkers final twist. This allows for Perkins to have his most successful film financially, and allows for a much larger audience to deal with something that won't leave them as quickly as your average horror film. Perkins is throwing a lot at the film with a variety of aspect ratios utilized throughout the film, which leads the audience into an uncomfortable world. I find his direction in this film to be much more confident and secure in itself than his previous efforts. This confidence allows for weirder choices and less need to rely on genre tropes to ensure the audience stays with you. Recurring motifs permeate the film, with Perkins relishing in further explorations of his psyche through horror. The film again deals strongly with a sense of Catholic horror, as with Blackcoat's Daughter. Of course, this is not your typical Catholic horror film, but instead uses some of the iconography as a vehicle towards further unsettling the audience and genre. The nun iconography, the satanic imagery and themes, and the repeating image of the same devil we caught glimpses of in Blackcoat's Daughter all lead to a slow unraveling of the comfort of even slow scenes. Every image, every moment has the potential for some new malevolent element that furthers the dread. It allows for the transition to feel more natural from a serial killer procedural into something much more decidedly supernatural. It feels like that is what the film is systematically leading to. It allows for the audience to not feel whiplash, but a retroactive sense of foreboding throughout the picture that leads to an inevitable finale. The film is unpredictable, but on rewatch you can see the masterful unspooling of thread by Perkins. I love the way the narrative unfolds and the way he twists his audience into knots. The acting and directing all add to this unbelievable sense of dread that permeates the whole film. The film's sound design, cinematography, and music add to this and leaves us at its mercy. Like we're in the hands of a very meticulous madman who relishes in our squirms and protests as he further unravels our sense of reality. His method of horror taps into a deeply disturbing collective nightmare, like we're watching something we shouldn't be, like some deep part of our psyche is being uncovered, some deep secret is being forcefully brought back into the present, serving to scare the hell out of us. I believe that this film is not only one of the best horror films of 2024, or even of the 2020s so far, but will be looked back on as a staple of this era of horror, showcasing Oz Perkins' talent and high level of execution at this moment. I can't wait to continue to watch the film throughout the rest of my life, with new layers of horror continuing to be unraveled on each rewatch. Perkins' next film, The Monkey, is coming out soon, and you better believe I'll be in the audience for that one. That's all for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next week!